All right, Saagar, what are you looking at?
Well, before I begin, I want to say something clearly. I think actual critical and analytical reporting on Elon Musk, his businesses, his ties to different regimes, and generally how he wants to run Twitter when he eventually takes it over are vital and important. But as always, the biggest problem with our censorship and racial-obsessed press is that they literally do the opposite of that. They sling ad hominem and, in this case, false attacks, which invalidate and possibly even discourage real reporting on the subject. The latest example is truly one of the most disgusting hit pieces that I've seen yet from the New York Times, who wrote, quote, Elon Musk grew up in elite white communities in South Africa, detached from apartheid's atrocities and surrounded by anti-black propaganda. They add, he sees his takeover of Twitter as free speech win, but in his youth did not suffer the effects of misinformation. So what's the takeaway from that? Elon grew up in apartheid South Africa in communities of racists, but by growing up there, he did not suffer from the dangers of racist misinformation. I'm skeptical, but I'm open to it. But per the author of the piece, Musk was sheltered from the disgusting nature of apartheid. And yet, in the very same story, the Times wrote, Musk had non-white friends growing up in South Africa, which is actually pretty courageous considering it was the most racially segregated society on Earth at the time. And in fact, per one of his friends growing up, he was actually bullied by his actually racist classmates for having non-white friends. That friend of his later recalled that Musk was one of the very few whites who even attended the funeral of the man in their family's village at the time. Now look, I've seen some deride this as, yeah, but he has black friends defense. I have a question to pose. How many of the woke people saying that would have had the real courage to have actual non-white friends as a white person in apartheid South Africa, where you have to suffer very real social and economic costs? I think we know the answer, but let's continue on. The second accusation against Elon by the Times is that he grew up in elite white circles protected from the true costs of South Africa, which is interesting because in the exact same piece, they actually quote Musk's own father, who says, quote, as far as being sheltered from it, that's nonsense. They were confronted by it every day, adding they didn't like it. The Times even notes that Musk's father was a member of the anti-apartheid Progressive Party while he was growing up. And finally, in one of the most significant and important facts here, Musk actually left apartheid South Africa to make sure he did not have to serve in the military there, specifically because he did not agree with the racial regime. As Stratechery's Ben Thompson notes, quote, being a liberal with forbidden black friends under a censorious apartheid regime that denied its atrocities is a powerful origin story for Musk's focus on free speech. So powerful, in fact, this takeaway shines through a ham-fisted narrative insinuating the opposite. And that's really the repulsive part. If you read this story, you would have the opposite takeaway of the headline. Of a socially awkward person who had non-white friends, saw the crazy censorship of the apartheid regime, came to the West and to America, and wants to make sure such a system is not in place that resembles anything like that of which he grew up in. Now look, is that the noble intention of Elon Musk? Who knows? That's the real question. That is where the reporting should stay. Insinuating that Musk is some pro-apartheid racist when the facts all literally point to the opposite is repulsive, and we all know why it's being done. It's because of a current censorious nature of Twitter serves elite liberal ends. As Freddie DeBoer so eloquently writes, quote, liberals and leftists are afraid because Twitter is where they perform the personalities that they lack in real life, where they act like the confident and clever people they patently aren't. Ooh, brutal. And absolutely true. The current version of Twitter is to be protected at all costs because it fundamentally is about elite comfort. That is how criticizing somebody became quote-unquote harassment. That's how some stories get allowed and others don't. It's the mindset that leads to these insane feats of so-called journalism when real journalism is sorely needed. And as I pointed out in my own debunking of this article, we should have a lot more of this type of journalism that we saw from the Wall Street Journal in December on Elon Musk's ties to China, his deep reliance on the CCP for the Tesla supply chain, the subsequent reality that Elon could have had a serious problem on his hands if he wants to have Uyghur activists and Hong Kong freedom protesters on that platform. The Chinese have him over the barrel because of choices that he's made with Tesla, which is where the vast majority of his net worth is derived from. Not only that, but Elon has taken out billions of dollars in loans against his Tesla stock, meaning if the Chinese target the stock, they can specifically target his own personal net worth, Or how about this? After Elon tussled with the Saudi royal family on Twitter and stood up to them, why did he then bring in nearly $400 million of Qatari royal family money to help him finance his ownership of Twitter? And in fact, as I said earlier, you remember that Saudi prince that he was jousting with? Well, that prince is going to allow his stock to roll over under Elon and will retain a nearly $2 billion ownership stake in the company. You see, these are the stories that we need. Look, of course, there is some coverage of this, but it is scant and it doesn't dominate the conversation, when really, that's the only thing we should be talking about. As always, in the race-obsessed press, in its attempt to take out Elon, has honestly just made him stronger. If you care about real scrutiny of public officials like him, this is the absolute worst possible outcome that you could have. And that's actually something I want to focus on, which is that
cable news is ripping us apart, dividing the country, making it impossible to function as a society, and making it impossible to know just what is true and what is false. But the good news is they are failing and they know it.
That is why we're building something new, a new mainstream, a healthier one, something more trustworthy, something that we are going to need in one of the most pivotal times in American history. We are building up here for the midterms, for the upcoming presidential election, but we need your help. So if you can help us out by becoming a premium member today at breakingpoints.com, we're trying to change America for the better and the entire world.
So what are you waiting for, guys? Go to breakingpoints.com and sign up and help us build a new mainstream.